annual meeting of the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. So we need to pause from all of the education and networking and whatever else is going on to conduct some business. So what I'd like to do is I would like to call this annual meeting of ANJEC to order. And I would like to remind all of you who are members of environmental commissions that you can vote, and you are our members. We have two pieces of business, as I said. First is to elect officers and trustees. And the second motion is very simple. I'm just going to ask you to authorize the Board of Trustees to read and approve the minutes of this meeting at its next meeting. So those are the two pieces of business. In your program, towards the back of the booklet, there is a list of trustees, officers, and staff. And on that page, you will see the slate of officers for 2017-2018 to be elected. We have two officers' terms, which are 2 years. The first is for treasurer, the second is for the vice president of development. And then we have a slate of 4 trustees to be elected for a 3-year term. So we would like to put in nomination the name of Leonard Berkowitz as treasurer, the position of treasurer, Barbara Badney to the position of Vice President of Development, and then for trustees, Lee Farnham, Amanda Neschwit, Janine Tancus, and John Fanay. At this point, I would open the floor if there are any nominations. It's been moved and seconded that the nominations be closed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And is there a motion to declare the slate of officers elected for the duly named terms?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So carried. Congratulations to Len, Barbara, Lee, Amanda, Janine, and John. They have been doing a great job. They are all being reelected. And I would just like to say a personal thank you to the other trustees that serve with me on the board, and their faithfulness and their dedication and support of this organization. And of course, a big thank you to our staff led by Jen Coffey, our executive director, and the volunteers. So thank you to them. The last piece of business is to authorize the Board of Trustees to read the minutes of this meeting and to approve them on behalf of the organization. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So carried. And as can be my purview, I would declare the annual meeting closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. It's good to see everybody made it back. Anybody get a chance to go through the ride and drive? Yeah, a couple people? We didn't lose anybody out there? Okay, excellent. So it is the portion of the day where it's my great privilege to introduce someone very special who will be introducing someone very special. It's my privilege to recognize one of my mentors, Ms. Candy Mckee Ashman, to present the second annual designation of the Candy Mckee Ashman Environmental Legacy Award. This award is named in honor of ANJEC's first director, Candy. She has served a leadership role at ANJEC for over 40 years. She steadfastly supports ANJEC and our goal of achieving responsible, sustainable use of New Jersey's natural resources. Candy's dedication and expertise has empowered ANJEC to provide leadership, education, and support for environmental commissions and other local officials advocating for strong policies. Candy is a tireless leader for New Jersey's environment, a long-standing founding member of the New Jersey Pinelands Commission, and a mentor and inspiration to generations of environmental advocates here. So that said, Candy, where would you like to speak from? Here? There? Let me mic that. Go for it. Have a seat. Your mic is live. You want to get here?
Mike is alive, that's scary. Maybe he'll leave me. Thank you all for your applause and encouragement. Barbara Rich. Now, there is a name and personality that rings a bell for each and every one of us. Everyone here, even if you don't know it, you've done something with Barbara Rich. It's not just because she does good works by the bundle. No, just because she is the only person in New Jersey who loves acronyms. We struggle with acronyms. She just eats them up. How about the fact she actually wants to know what those weird acronyms really mean? Are they really supposed to do that? She asks. Her intellectual curiosity knows no bounds. Imagine yourself really wanting to know the importance of acidity in the local soil. Imagine reading land use ordinances or the Pinelands Plan for pleasure. At ANJEC, Barbara is known as one of our frequent flyers in the Resource Center. She flies into the Resource Center not to ask someone else to look up an important fact, but to do her homework and her own research. And then there is her interest and use of process. I think we're all used to process as a tool to accomplish our missions at the local level. We've all been tangled up in process at one time or another. Barbara goes us all one better. She has every process at every level, local, county, state, national, at her fingertips. And she will track every single application. She tracks them until the real question, and I quote, "Can they really do this?" is answered. I'm proud to call Barbara my friend and longtime colleague. I am doubly proud that we have shared interests all the way from the New Jersey Highlands to the New Jersey Pinelands. Barbara, it is my great honor on behalf of ANJEC, myself, and all New Jerseyans to thank you for all you have done and will do in the days ahead. Please come. Reads, in honor of timeless dedication to local and regional environmental leadership in New Jersey. It's all yours.
And thank you, ANJEC. ANJEC provides the gold standard, but then again, I think they tell tales out of school at the same time. I didn't realize I was that involved in researching, but I think it's worth the time and effort when you do, because it ends up being an excellent result. So I thank you one and all. You are an inspiration. We have many mentors, and many of you are in this audience, and I thank you.
I feel called upon to give a personal testimony to both these women. I lived in St. Paul for 25 years. When I was here in 1988, I did a residency in family practice in Mount Holly. And I fell in love with the Red Clovis. And I became interested in watershed organizations at that time. And when I got to the critical mass where I had a list of 35 names and a letter to send out to ask people about watershed management in the Red Clovis, I asked someone, and I think it may have been Candy, although I'm not sure, I said, well, who would help me with this effort? And the name popped out, Barbara Rich. And I didn't know Barbara, but I had a phone number. So I called her up, and she said, and I said, I had envelopes and a letter, and I have to work. And she said, well, put this bag out on the counter at the hospital. The next morning it'll be back there. Well, in fact, it was. And out of that interaction, an inquiry, an extension of goodwill, and an immediate response that led to the creation of a new nonprofit, the Red Clovis Conservancy. And it's taken me 25 years by virtue of family and work to get back here. But one of the reasons I'm back here, or one of the big reasons I'm back here, is Barbara. So I pay great tribute to her and the wonderful network here that lifts her and all others up in New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Candy. And I want to thank all of you because there are so many stories to be told here. And it is, well, overwhelmed by that tribute. Now it is our opportunity to have our afternoon plenary session. And as you will all know, we have this achievement award here, and so this will hang in ANJEC's office. So you're all welcome to come and visit us in the Resource Center and do your homework in Barbara's honor and come see the plaque. That said, we now have an excellent panel this afternoon of three brain trusts that I'm really excited to sit down and listen to. First we have, and I'd like to invite them up to have a seat up in front and speak at whichever mic is your pleasure. We have Governor James Florio, former governor of New Jersey. We also have Ms. Lisa Plevin, the former Chief of Staff of EPA Region 2. And Ms. Cindy Ehrenclou, the Executive Director of Raritan Headwaters Association. And I will try to be brief, but these are some exceptional resumes here. Governor Florio entered public service in 1969, serving 3 terms in the New Jersey General Assembly. He went on to represent the 1st District of New Jersey in the House of Representatives from 1974 through 1990, authorizing the federal Superfund law and sponsoring legislation in 1977 to establish a reserve in the New Jersey Pinelands, which led ultimately to the passage of New Jersey's Pineland Protection Act. He later served as chairman of the Pinelands Commission. During his term as governor from 1990 to 1994, Mr. Florio also signed the state's Clean Water Enforcement Act, one of the strongest laws of its type in the nation. And for that, I am personally thankful. Governor Florio is a founding partner of Florio, Perucci, Steinhardt, and Fader, and chairs the firm's environmental group. He's also a senior policy fellow for public policy administration at the Blaustein School in Rutgers. Governor Florio holds numerous honorary degrees and is the recipient of the 1993 Profile and Courage Award by the John F. Kennedy Library Foundation. Mr. Florio is a veteran of the U.S. Navy, served 4 years in active duty, and I would like to extend a gratitude of thanks for his service to our great state, our nation, and today, especially to our environment. Ms. Lisa Plevin is the former Chief of Staff for EPA Region 2 U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and has served a leadership role in working to protect New Jersey's environment for over 35 years. She began at the Clean Water Action, organizing advocacy efforts and a coalition of 85 organizations, which helped New Jersey's landmark Clean Water Enforcement Act, the first state law to call for criminal penalties for violations of the Water Pollution Act. She then worked for U.S. Senator Frank Lautenberg as his Director of Constituent Services. Following this, she served as Deputy Executive Director of the Elizabeth Development Corporation, where she assisted in managing nonprofit economic development agency, including budget and project development implementation. Lisa Plevin served as Chief of Staff for EPA Region 2, which is New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And our thoughts are certainly with Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands these days. She worked there from 2010 till 2017. She's now spearheading a collaborative effort of over 30 environmental groups for the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, and ANJEC is a proud member of that coalition. And that group is developing an environmental transition planning guide, which will provide recommendations to the next governor of New Jersey on key environmental policies and projects. As you know, ANJEC is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so we do not endorse political candidates, but we are endorsing the issues that are of priority importance for the next governor. So those Green and 17 guides are available on the front desk, and we look forward to hearing more about it. Lisa and I are also proud fellow alums from the Richard Stockton College of New Jersey, now Richard Stockton University. And Ms. Cindy Ehrenclou is the Executive Director of Raritan Headwaters. She became the Director of the Upper Raritan Watershed Association in February 2006 after 12 years as association's development director. Cindy established education and outreach programs for families and children, including nature camps and regional school programs, founded an environmental information series for municipal leaders in 2011, and spearheaded a merger between South Branch and Upper Raritan Watershed Associations. She's a 2007 graduate of Leadership New Jersey and is the chair of New Jersey Conservation Foundation Voters Education Fund. In addition, Cindy serves as a member of New Jersey Land Trust Network, Keep It Green Campaign, New Jersey Highlands Coalition, and the Sustainable River Initiative Steering Committee. When do you sleep? You don't sleep. Cindy has a wealth of knowledge and experience in establishing successful partnerships, and I am pleased that she's here today to speak about strengthening connections between watershed groups and municipal officials. We have, as you have heard, an esteemed panel here to talk about the priorities for the environment in the next year and years to come as we transition into having new leadership here at the state, and we are experiencing new leadership federally as well. So I welcome my panel, and we will also have time for question and answers as well. Governor, would you like to speak up here? Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon to everyone. I just say I'm very pleased to receive the invitation to come and share some thoughts with you, particularly about water policy, which I will do. And say I'm pleased to be here with great two panelists. Of course, Candy Ashman has been an inspiration to everyone, including myself. One of the things Candy and I talked about was one of the virtues of longevity. One of the few virtues of longevity being perspective. how you can get a perspective on things, and how you can appreciate the fact that things change. Things change, and some things don't change over a period of time. And I guess thinking environmentally, that things that have changed over the years have had periods of progress and periods of regression over the last 40 years that I've been involved. And we are now in a period that's a turning point. We have the capability of going down or up. I think it's important for us to appreciate the fact that this turning point is going to entail making some decisions by all of us. One of the decisions deals with water policy and what we're going to do about it. Water policy for New Jersey is extremely important. We have an appreciation of the fact that the budget is now being offered in Washington is one that can have a dramatically bad impact on the environment in general and water in particular. And they talk about a 31% reduction in funding. So about losing 3,100 people. That's a very troubling thing, because losing those people effectively means that we're repealing many of the laws of experience. They can't repeal it directly. So what they do is take away the money, take away the personnel, the laws don't get enforced, and effectively they're repealed. New Jersey water policy can be affected dramatically in a very adverse way if those types of cuts go through. What we're talking about is Superfund, as an example. New Jersey has more Superfund sites than any other state in the nation, something like 110, which means that we have 21 counties, 110 sites, about 20 per site per county. So nobody lives very far from any of these sites, which by definition are imminent and substantial hazards to people's health and the environment. That's water leaches into our groundwater and our surface water. Am I doing that? Okay. Anyway, so that's a very serious problem. Unless we remediate many of those sites, it's something that's really going to occur to us. It's not good for the water supplies. RCRA, Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. That's the law that provides procedures for disposing of hazardous waste going forward. If that law is not enforced and not carried out, we'll be creating new Superfund sites, which is particularly perverse, because we have the law to stop that from happening, but it's not enforced, will continue to happen. We have lots of other problems that we have to deal with, dealing with the Clean Water Act, and the whole idea of making sure that we're not putting more stormwater into wastewater treatment facilities, because then we have CSOs if we do that. And that's not something that's desirable at all. We have a number of the whole climate change issue. If we don't do something about climate change, sea levels continue up. We have saltwater intrusion into the Hudson River, into the Delaware River, which contaminates aquifers for our treatment water purposes. That's not something that's desirable. We have a whole lot of other programs which we have to fund to make sure that we get lead out of drinking water systems. That's something, Flint-like facilities in New Jersey, which have to be addressed as well. I guess what I would just urge everyone to do is become a little bit involved. When I said yes to this invitation, one of the things that I appreciated was the fact that you really believe in the philosophy that I share with you, that in order to get anything done in any area, what we have to have is people engaged and informed. It's extremely important, because we have to be engaged, because the system doesn't really work unless we all work at making it work. And that entails getting people engaged to become involved in making the process work. And informed, because the problems are becoming much more complex than they used to be. We need people to go out and explain what it is that's going on. Changes that are occurring nowadays are changes that are not normal changes. They're dramatic, they're rapid, they're very complex. So we have to have people to go out and explain the complexities, because it takes more work than usually would. If we don't explain the complexities, people can't formulate their views as to what we should be doing about them. You can't fix the problem if you don't understand the problem. There are no answers if you don't know what the questions are. So we have to have people out there almost playing the education role, to get people to understand what the options are. Because really, nowadays, there are very few good options. Sometimes we come to make a choice about which is the best of the worst option. The next governor in New Jersey, whomever it is going to have his her hands full, because none of the options are good, but they have to be dealt with. So we agree we get people involved and engaged in the process. We can work through those types of things. I guess what I would urge everyone to do is to become more informed and to be more capable of making good judgments. There's a sociologist, Daniel Yankelovich, talks about the difference between public relations and public judgment. In public relations, public opinion rather, is just about impressions, a snapshot in time. Public judgment is more analytical, coming to conclusions and are thoughtful and think in terms of the long term rather than the short term. That's what we have to do, encourage people to do that sort of thing. I guess what I would just do is conclude by saying that I'm looking forward to the questions and answers portion of this program, and say that conclude on an optimistic note. I quote my favorite quote from Winston Churchill, when Churchill said, with regard to public policy, the Americans always seem to get it right after they've exhausted all the alternatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor Florio. I would like to invite Ms. Lisa Plevin to come up and share her thoughts with us. Thank you, Lisa. Yesterday. I'm assuming you've already sang to her, right?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jennifer. Happy birthday to you.
Sorry, she's going to kill me for that. So thank you very much, and congratulations to all of you on your 44th Environmental Congress. That's a wonderful achievement. I certainly haven't been to 44 of them, but I've probably been to about half that number. So it's a real milestone, and I congratulate you. In 2010, as Jen mentioned, I was honored to be appointed by President Barack Obama to serve as Chief of Staff for EPA Region 2, which covers New Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and 8 Indian nations, with a staff of about 900 people and an annual budget of $700 million. Time for the reading glasses, I think. That I didn't need 22 years ago. I served until this January when a new administration came into office. And during the 7 years that I worked there, I learned firsthand how critically important the mission of the agency is and how truly dedicated and hardworking the staff are. And you hear this anecdotally, but I can tell you, and so can others that have worked at EPA, including Jean, that's over there, so many of them could have either retired years ago or gone to work in the private sector for literally double their salaries, but they haven't. And they've stayed with the agency because they believe in its mission of protecting human health and the environment. And they believe that government has a responsibility to help accomplish this. Unfortunately, President Trump has repeatedly stated that he would like to eliminate the EPA. In May, the Trump administration proposed a fiscal year 18 budget for EPA, which you heard earlier, with a 31% cut to the agency, reducing its overall funding level to $5.6 billion. On a percentage basis, that's the largest proposed cut to any federal agency. It would give the EPA its smallest budget in 40 years, adjusting for inflation. This budget completely eliminates 50 programs, slashes the rest by roughly a third, and would impact 3,800 full-time employees, or 20% of the agency's workforce. And just to give you an update, since then in July, the House Appropriations Committee, chaired by Congressman Frelinghuysen, my congressman, passed an appropriations bill that contained a 7% cut of $528 million to the EPA budget. And then on September 13th, the full House passed an appropriations bill for FY18, and the bill was HR 3354, if any of you are Bill wonks. This bill had an 8% cut to the agency. It slashes EPA's budget even beyond the $528 million cut recommended by Congressman Frelinghuysen's Appropriations Subcommittee. It redirected an additional $128 million from EPA to other agencies for a total reduction in the agency's budget of $656 million. And to get a little wonky, especially damaging within that framework, is $381 million in cuts to what's called the Environmental Programs and Management account, which is what provides most of the funding for the agency's main regulatory operations: air, water, pesticides, chemicals, hazardous waste, and enforcement. So in total, the bill cuts funding for those core programs by 27%, providing these programs even less by $141 million than the Trump administration requested. So one thing that's on our mind right now, of course, is what's happening with the impacts of the hurricanes that we've seen. And as you know, an important function of EPA is to also respond to natural disasters. We saw firsthand in New Jersey how valuable they were on the ground during Superstorm Sandy. EPA plays a critical role in natural disasters in protecting human health and the environment. For example, for the recent response to Hurricane Maria and the destruction in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, the EPA has almost 240 staff on the ground there working hard to provide drinking water to residents, to get wastewater systems back online, overseeing oil and chemical spill response, assessments of oil and chemical facilities, and Superfund sites, and debris management. So while you may think that the House bill is a marked improvement to the Trump budget, and again, the House bill is an 8% cut to the agency, this is an agency already running at bare bones level, and it would be devastating to incorporate an 8% cut on top of that. It would reduce the agency staff to pre-1990 levels. Jen had talked to me about sort of doing a deep dive on what's happening federally and the impacts in New Jersey. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about not just the budget, but what you may have heard about in terms of some of the amendments or riders that were attached to that House bill. And I'm only focusing on the ones for EPA. There were other environmental riders for other agencies you've probably heard about, but these are going to focus on EPA's responsibilities. So just a handful of those anti-environment riders include language which would bar the enforcement of EPA's methane rule, which sets greenhouse gas limits for new oil and gas sources. It would delay implementation of EPA's latest standards for ozone smog pollution, delay them for 10 years. It would prevent EPA from requiring large animal farms to properly store, transport, and dispose of waste, impacting drinking water. And it would also allow EPA to withdraw from something you've probably heard about called Waters of the US rule without going through a public participation and comment period. And the danger of this rider is that it would create a very dangerous precedent, undoing potentially 70 years of an open public process anytime a major rule or regulation is potentially adopted or repealed. And that's a very important process issue. So those are just a few. And to update you a little further, so far the Senate obviously has taken no action on that House budget bill, but Congress did pass a continuing resolution on September 8th to keep current funding levels where they are in place for agencies until December 8th. So that's the magic date that we need to keep in mind. And in addition to disastrous cuts to EPA, the current administration has also moved forward on many harmful executive orders. Again, to name just a few, because I don't have 3 hours, President Trump signed an executive order, as you probably heard, to roll back the Clean Power Plan, the first regulation to require the reduction of carbon pollution from all fossil fuel plants. And in fact, on Tuesday, EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt formally moved to rescind this plan. That's all right. The Clean Power Plan requires states to meet specific carbon emission reduction standards based on their individual energy consumption. It also includes an incentive program for meeting standards ahead of time for renewable energy and low-income energy efficiency. The EPA had estimated that the Clean Power Plan could prevent between 2,700 to 6,600 premature deaths in this country and 140,000 to 150,000 asthma attacks in children. President Trump, as I'm sure you know, also pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. 195 nations signed this agreement to reduce carbon pollution. 2 countries are not part of it, the United States and Syria. The U.S. is the second largest polluter of carbon in the world. In the Paris Accord, we would have committed to reducing our carbon emissions by 26 to 28% over the next 10 years. And in fact, you may have seen earlier this week, sadly, the EPA just released its 4-year strategic plan. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. And nowhere in that entire strategic plan do the words climate change appear anywhere, which is stunning. So back to the budget. So because we don't have a final 2018 budget and we don't really know what the numbers are going to end up looking like, the Trump administration budget proposal is still the primary proposal that is on the table for discussion. So what does this mean for New Jersey? Well, it's not good news. New Jersey could be one of the hardest hit states in the country in terms of these budget cuts, and let me explain why. A significant percentage of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's budget comes from the EPA, and there are numerous key programs that many of you already know that are delegated from the federal government, from the EPA to the state of New Jersey for implementation and enforcement. So I'm going to go into the deep dive part now about what this means to New Jersey. I just want to explain one thing to you. I'm going to share with you the information that I have most recently. Because it varies in terms of accuracy, I've either attributed it to fiscal year 16 or 17, so you know the difference, because that's where I've got the most accurate information. And you may not be shocked to realize this, but finding this information was difficult. You wouldn't think it would be, but it is. So let's start with the 50 programs in the Trump budget that are targeted for complete elimination, and the ones that will have the most significant impact on New Jersey. Number 1, non-point source pollution. Section 319 of the Clean Water Act provides funding for technical assistance, for financial assistance, monitoring, training, evaluation. For fiscal year 17, New Jersey DEP got $2.7 million from the EPA for this program. That will be gone. National estuary programs, something I'm sure you're all familiar with. 28 programs nationwide. New Jersey has 3 very important estuary programs. Each estuary program receives $600,000 a year. It's a critical part of its budget. They use this funding to leverage other sources of funding. So it's a ripple effect if this money is withdrawn. The 3 estuary programs, just in case you're wondering, are the New York, New Jersey Harbor Estuary, Barnegat Bay, and the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary. That money will be gone, $600,000 each. Pollution prevention grants. For fiscal year 16, New Jersey got $179,000, which was awarded to the state and 2 colleges as part of the education process to learn about how to prevent pollution so you don't have to clean it up. That program will be gone. Underground storage tanks funding for leak detection and prevention. For fiscal year 16, the DEP got $972,000. That would be eliminated. Leaking underground storage tank prevention funding for inspections and enforcement. In fiscal year 16, DEP got $1.3 million for that program. That will be gone. Radon funding for the development of state programs, public education, equipment training, toll-free hotlines. Radon is the 2nd highest cause of lung cancer in the U.S. And one fact that I didn't realize before I started looking into this is due in part to the Reading prong. The DEP estimates that 566 deaths per year in New Jersey result from exposure. Anybody know that? I didn't. That's a lot. So in fiscal year 17, the DEP received $358,000 for that program. Gone. Environmental justice, an important issue we all hear about. Nationally, the program gets $7.3 million at EPA, has 40 full-time staff slots nationally. In Region 2, there's 4 full-time people working on environmental justice issues, and in particular in New Jersey, focusing on areas like Newark and Camden. That would be gone. Multi-purpose grants, which allow states to determine what their priorities are and fund implementation activities, gives the states a little leeway to target money to special priorities. Fiscal year 17, DEP got $400,000 for this program. Gone. Lead risk reduction, training and certification for removal of lead paint, which even in 2017, as you probably know, is still a major problem in New Jersey. Department of Health for fiscal year 16 got $261,000. Gone. And finally, I think we're fine. Yes, last one. Before you all become suicidal. The beach monitoring program through the Beach Act, which supports monitoring and assessment for our coastal recreation waters to ensure they're safe for swimming. Fiscal year 16, DEP received $263,000. That'll be done. So in addition to completely eliminating 50 programs, as you've heard, there's also very deep cuts to the remaining programs that the Trump administration's budget is proposing. Deep cuts of 30% or more to most programs. So these are some of the key ones that will impact New Jersey the most, again. And I'll start with Superfund, in honor of the father of Superfund who has joined us today. And because, frankly, it's a key issue for New Jersey. We have 114 Superfund sites. As you heard Governor Florio say, we've got the most in the country here in New Jersey. The proposed Superfund budget cut of 25% nationally would result in 536 staff slots being lost. Since New Jersey gets a lion's share of the national Superfund budget, because we are aggressive in cleaning up our sites, we get 25% of the national budget of Superfund. This cut will have a particularly devastating impact on our state and on our ability to assess and remediate these toxic sites. And separately from that, you may or may not know that the state of New Jersey and EPA enter into what's called a performance partnership agreement, where money is transferred and the details of where the funding will go is spelled out. So in that particular document, the DEP in fiscal year 16 got another $1.2 million for site assessments under this agreement. And that's basically for them to go out and determine whether sites in fact are serious enough to rank on the Superfund list. And as you probably heard recently, Administrator Scott Pruitt convened a Superfund task force to look for recommendations on how the agency can, quote, restructure the cleanup process, promote expeditious remediation, reduce the burden on cooperating parties. These are all buzzwords, and they're not good ones. And at any rate, the results of this study raised serious concerns about whether there might be shortcuts implemented to the Superfund program, which could result in insufficient assessment, contamination, and therefore, obviously, an incomplete cleanup remedy. And I think this is particularly important for people who represent municipalities in some capacity. Because obviously, if these sites sit here and can't be redeveloped or reused, even for dog parks, which is what they did in Wayne, then they remain a blight on the community. So another program that's going to see a cut of 30% nationally if the Trump budget goes through is the Brownfields program, which, as many of you probably know, provides money for assessment and cleanup of brownfield sites. And this cleanup results in redevelopment, jobs, and improved quality of life in our neighborhoods. In fact, in fiscal year 16, Atlantic City got 4 brownfields grants, totaling $764,000. Plainfield got a $400,000 grant. Jersey City got an $800,000 grant. And Asbury Park got a $400,000 grant. So often this money from EPA is what actually provides the seed money for municipalities to go ahead and work to clean up and redevelop these sites. Without this funding, many of these places would have no ability to do this. Wetlands programs grants, 30% national cut. They provide funding for projects that support research and training related to the causes and effects of water pollution and how important wetlands are. New Jersey got $641,000 for that program in FY16. Diesel emissions provides grants for emissions reductions through retrofitting engines, replacing them, switching to cleaner fuels. The proposed budget slashes this program nationally by 80%. And DEP got $342,000 for this in fiscal year 16. Clean Water Act, Section 106. Many of you probably know this. It provides funding to states and interstate agencies for pollution control of surface and groundwater pollution from point and non-point sources. National cut, 30%. New Jersey got $4.1 million in fiscal year 16. I'm almost done. Don't get so much. Public water system supervision provides grants for implementing and enforcing national drinking water standards. 30% cut. New Jersey got $2.2 million in fiscal year 17. Air pollution, 30% cut. Through a couple of different combined programs, and I can elaborate if you want. New Jersey anticipates getting $11.6 million in air pollution control funding, 30% cut. Pesticides, enforcement and training, a cut of 39% is proposed. For FY16, DEP got $408,000. So what does this mean overall? Because I've thrown a bunch of programs and numbers at you, and I recognize that. What's the overall impact to the DEP's budget and to New Jersey? So for fiscal year 17, the DEP budget totaled $648 million. Of this, $190 million came from federal funds. Of those federal funds, $140 million came from the EPA. So basically, that accounts for a cut of approximately 22% to the DEP's total budget for fiscal year 17. And obviously, as you all know firsthand, less money going to the state from EPA means less money flowing to municipalities. So hopefully I haven't depressed you too much, and there's still some energy left to think about what are we going to do. So I'm going to close with, if this is something that is important to you and you care about, there are many things you can do. And in fact, you are actually in a unique position to do many of them. Urge your elected officials to oppose any cuts to EPA's budget. For the recent House vote, New Jersey had 4 congresspeople that voted in favor of that budget and of those cuts. Congressman MacArthur, Congressman Smith, Congressman Lance, and Congressman Frelinghuysen, my congressman. Congressman Frelinghuysen deserves special mention. No, not for those reasons. As the chair of the Appropriations Committee, he is one of the most powerful people in the country, as I'm sure you've heard, when it comes to the budget, and he will continue to be so. That's important. It is very likely he will be pivotal in the future discussions about what ultimately happens with this budget and potentially negotiations that result in this budget. So even though you might be annoyed at how he's voted already, there's still a lot of work that he will probably be doing in the near future on EPA's budget. So if you're from these districts, I urge you to call your representative. Call, write, request a meeting, get your mayors involved. Believe me, it makes a difference. When Jen mentioned I worked for Senator Lautenberg for 16 years, and whenever there were hot button issues going on with his office, and there were often, we would give him a daily tally, yes, no, etc., of the calls and emails, and at that time letters, that were coming in. And if it was particularly hot, we would often update him twice. So legislators pay attention. I know sometimes it feels like they don't, but they do. For those of you that are from districts where the congressperson voted yes, voted no, opposing the budget, please call and thank them. That's one area that I think we're not as good as we could be, and we do need to give people positive reinforcement when they've done the right thing. Write op-eds, letters to the editors. Many of New Jersey's major environmental groups have joined together to work against this budget. Reach out and ask how you can participate. Urge our next governor, whoever it is, to fight back against these rollbacks. New York State is a great example where this is happening. You may have seen that Attorney General Eric Schneiderman has joined with other states on numerous occasions to sue the Trump administration for actions they're taking. In fact, he just announced this week that he's doing it again and suing the Trump administration over the repeal of the Clean Power Plan. And I want to say that from the bottom of my heart, I believe that as representatives of our local environmental commissions, you are in a unique place to influence your residents, your mayors, your elected officials to the state and federal level. And if this is something that's important to you and you believe in, I really urge you to be vocal and visible on this important issue that affects all of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I would also like, maybe I can just, there we go. No. I would like to invite Cindy Ehrenclou up to speak to us about strengthening the ties between watershed groups and municipal officials. And I want to remind you as she speaks and as you're formulating your questions, because our guests have said that they will take a few Q&As, to think about that thumb drive that you have in your pocket, in your bag, with you right now, and those 2018 priority actions that you are going to develop as soon as you leave here to put into motion next year, and hopefully even before that. So thank you, Cindy.
I thought you were so fun. So I'm a local person. I'm the townie in the group. It's going to talk about local action. So I work for a watershed association, and our outreach and advocacy work is statewide, but because watersheds are defined geographically, we are delivering services to a select group of municipalities. And at Raritan Headwaters, we serve 38 municipalities, and they are in 3 New Jersey counties, Morris, Somerset, and Hunterdon. So the health of our watershed depends on strong partnerships with every one of those 38 municipalities. We're going to have a new governor in January, so we can only hope for a positive change. And it's going to be a while before we can look to Washington for environmental leadership. So now more than ever, it is time to act locally. Think about it. Becoming active empowers each of us to make a difference. If we want to have change and improvement, the best course of action is to drive it ourselves. Like the title of this Congress, lead with local action, engage, protect, and restore. Not any one of us alone is completely prepared to address the environmental challenges we face in our communities. But right here at this Congress, there are opportunities for each of us to fine-tune our knowledge base so that we can understand the issues and we can work towards solutions. Raritan Headwaters likes to think of itself as the go-to expert in water resources, which we are. We've established a seminar series, thank you, Mr. Levins, that we call Watershed Tools for Local Leaders. And that's designed to provide knowledge and tools needed to protect drinking water solutions, to come to solutions. So our goal is to help municipalities develop their own internal expertise on a variety of complicated issues. Stormwater regulations, green infrastructure, arsenic awareness. We want to break down the science to arm local leaders with defendable and usable information. Sometimes good science and sound information isn't enough. In my own Burnsville borough, after 6 years of hard work by the Environmental Commission and thousands of dollars invested in professional expertise, a very important aquifer ordinance failed because the wrong people with self-interest are in place. The message is get new people, good people, in place. We need leadership to advocate for strong environmental policies in our communities. You asked me to talk about successes. and the coordination between watershed associations and local government. So I'm proud to talk about Raritan Headwaters' Community Well Test Program. Our well test program offers residents the opportunity to measure the safety of their drinking water by testing their own backyard wells. And that's important in my watershed because 80% of the residents depend on private wells for their drinking water. That's 4 out of 5 households depend on private wells. So unlike municipal water systems, private wells aren't subject to the testing requirements. So this makes it very critically important for property owners to test their wells on a regular basis. Together with municipalities across the region, we annually conduct more than 3,500 tests for contaminants, bacteria, arsenic, radon, nitrates, lead, and others. In addition, we use the data. Our association uses the data and information collected over time to identify changes, trends, and threats to local drinking water sources. Last year, we published a major groundwater report, and it showed that there are rising arsenic and nitrate levels in our watershed. And this is important information for our municipalities. And it also emphasizes the urgency for private well owners to have their wells tested. So we rely on the partnership with our municipalities to conduct this really important community-wide service. So another partnership worth mentioning, it seems very like a simple thing to do, and you can do this in all your towns. We have an annual stream cleanup event. Our municipalities share their clean community grants. And I don't know, you all know you have them, but it's a wonderful way to spend your clean community grants. And this supports a huge region-wide effort. And this past Earth Day, on April 22nd, 34 out of our 38 municipalities participated. And in only 3 morning hours, 1,360 volunteers came together to improve 64 miles of streams in our watershed. They hauled 14 tons of trash. That's 761 large trash bags, including 6,090 shopping bags out of the Raritan River. I think those are impressive numbers. And that is what I call engaging, protecting, and restoring, and really making a difference through local action. That's all I have to say, because I'm sure you think the cookies are coming out. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. And yes, so in your sample budget, which I know you're all eager to open up, which is on your thumb drive, there's a line item in there for Clean Communities money, just to remind you. So that was nice synergy. And so we have some time for Q&A. We've heard what challenges that we have for the next administration. We have heard what is coming down the pipeline in terms of the ways that New Jersey is going to be impacted from a budgetary stance. And we've also heard that it is possible, and I know it's possible, we've seen the Achievement Awards, we're learning about this in the workshops, you read about it on ANJEC News and ANJEC Report, that you are the difference. You are the boots on the ground, you are capable of combating this. We're not going to win every fight, but we can continue to make some progress here in the Garden State. So I want to open it up to question and answers, and hopefully we'll have some help circulating the microphones. Working? All right, there we go. Well, all right, you're person in the middle.
So this question is for Lisa.
Okay.
And this is kind of like a social justice question. What do you think the chances are that the Ramapos up in Ringwood, New Jersey will ever get any social justice? Are you familiar with them?
I'm very familiar with the site and the people who live up there. When I worked for Senator Lautenberg is when I first met the people from the Ramapo Indian tribe, and at that point the site had been delisted from the Superfund list, and nobody was listening to them, that they thought that there was still a lot of contamination. So I was very grateful that through working for Senator Lautenberg, I was able to refocus attention on this, and we actually got that site listed back on the Superfund list years ago, and there's been an ongoing cleanup. It's not over yet. It's not perfect, but there's been substantial progress. You know, to be honest, I don't know what you mean by the question, and I don't know if there's an environmental piece to it that you're asking me. I mean, it's you know, it's a difficult situation. There's many layers to it. I'm not sure what you're really asking. Are you asking about the cleanup of the Superfund site, or are you asking, you know, they're a state-listed tribe, not federally, so frankly, there's no federal recognition of their status as an Indian tribe.
Well, there have been hundreds of Ramapos who have passed away from, you know, cancer-related illnesses.
Right.
And it all has to do with the paint sludge issue that Ford dumped there years ago. And so I was wondering if you think on a medical standpoint it's ever going to be resolved in their favor.
I do. Myself and my boss, the regional administrator at EPA at the time, Judith Bank, frankly, the Ringwood site was one of our top priorities for a variety of reasons. I think that, you know, it's making a lot of progress. I think that there are some local issues, frankly, which are preventing as thorough a cleanup as EPA would have liked to see. I don't know how in-depth, how familiar you are, but you know, there's a recycling center being proposed, which would actually reduce the level of cleanup, but that's being proposed by the municipality, not the federal government. So I think ultimately they're moving in the right direction. It's not perfect, but I do think that there's a recognition that more cleanup has to continue. And there's a plan in place for the different components of the Superfund site to figure out how to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Quick question about the budget numbers. I recently retired from New Jersey DEP hazardous waste enforcement. Did you mention any figures on reduction in hazardous waste enforcement that they're proposing?
I did not.
Do you know if they are?
I don't.
I'd be surprised.
You know, it may or may not shock you that extracting this accurate information was very difficult. And when I say accurate,
I'm sure.
I say that because there's a lot of information out there. Figuring out what's accurate is challenging. And at this point, again, to be frank, I'm having trouble getting accurate information from both the federal and the state government. So I do not know the answer to that.
Thank you.
Hi, this is for Lisa. I have a question about the lead repair, renovation, and painting rule. I've heard variously that it has been pulled, that it's alive and well, and also that there was a provision buried in one of the bills that would bar enforcement of the rule. So I'm wondering what the status of it is.
I don't know.
Okay.
I say this because last I heard, I know that they were looking to repeal it, but I don't know if that occurred. But the Trump administration had talked about repealing. If you want to give me your information, I can look into that. You're talking about the certification.
Well,
provisions
yeah, and the general,
training for lead removal,
yes,
right?
yeah. I know that even if it's in place, one of the stumbling blocks is that they want the state to enforce it, and the state doesn't have the budget to do that for DCA. Okay.
So when you're done,
Hi, this question is for Cindy. You had 1,300 people show up for this. Right, it's wonderful. 35 communities, so that's about 40 people per community. How did you get them to all come together for that?
We actually, we communicated well beforehand. We have a site coordinator for each one of the sites. We take the Clean Communities grant money, we buy bags and gloves and set up all sorts of first aid kits and all of it. Each site coordinator is in charge of managing that site. Sometimes there's a scout group, a church group, a corporate group, and when they sign up online, and then we set them up at one site or another. It literally happens in 3 hours. It's pretty amazing. Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
Let's say that, gosh, I think, I wish I had the exact number, but it's over 15 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any information on the cleanup of the lower Passaic? Is that going to be proceeding as hopefully planned?
I believe it is the short answer. Because before we left office, we looked very closely at that one again as a major priority. Talked with the director of the Superfund program to get the lay of the land, and at that time, and I can't make any promises because anything can happen, but at that time, the feeling was that since the record of decision has been issued for the cleanup of the Passaic River's Superfund site, 17 miles of the Passaic, for those that don't know, the record of decision was issued over a year ago now, I think. And so the feeling was that since the record of decision had been issued, the only way to reopen it is to come up with some very new scientific data showing that something was not as it was originally thought when the sampling was done. So fingers crossed, I think it'll be in good shape.
This is Pat Noble out here. Question for Cindy. I'm from the Aberdeen Township Environmental Board, and I also attend the Bayshore Watershed Council meetings. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on what would happen with the New York-New Jersey estuary program losing its funding, with a place like the Bayshore Watershed Council having to interact with New York. Because we're a local, and who facilitates that communication between the two local boards? Are we going to have to do that ourselves?
It sounds like it, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that, but it's really going to be up to the local folks to get together.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Greg Zaborski, Stillwater Township Environmental Commission, and I have a question regarding what the correlation would be between all of these proposed reductions as far as debt reduction, job creation, tax reduction, or is this just a handout to corporations and friends and so on? Is there any way for this administration to quantify that all of this devastation, which where I'm sitting, looks like there's going to be a lot of jobs lost, a lot of opportunities lost. How is that going to be sold to us?
I'm not, I apologize, I'm not 100% clear exactly what you're asking, but are you asking that, is there a way, the budget cuts that we're talking about, is there a way to quantify the economic impact on New Jersey? Is that your question?
Right, well, I just see a disconnect between the logic of doing
Yes.
this and
Yes. Absolutely. One example that I didn't belabor up there is that the current administration is talking about justifying these draconian budget cuts by saying it's time for the states to take more ownership of these programs. Well and good, except they're also then turning around and cutting funding to the states to these programs by an average of about 45%. So you tell me where's the logic in that? There's not.
Your question really highlights the importance of citizen involvement, because there's a need for education to lift the level of awareness of people to the consequences and the alternatives. For example, the president's gone out and made a big deal about wanting to put all the coal miners back to work. It sounds very nice, except that it's not going to happen for a whole bunch of reasons. The alternative to the coal miners are putting people to work building wind turbines, solar installations. So This is not just an environmental issue or an energy issue. It's an economic issue as well. Jobs being created in these clean energy areas are tremendously great in terms of the number. So there's a need for education saying what the long-term interest is, what the short-term interest is. And jobs is a very forceful motivation to get people behind things. And how you can point out cuts in these programs are counterproductive in terms of employment opportunities. Someone's got to get out there and talk about those things. What's happening is that we're listening to short-term answers. In this last election, it's very frustrating because people are concerned, people are stressed out, and they're looking for answers. And they want specific answers. And we had someone who came forward and gave them specific answers. We're going to build a wall. Mexico's going to pay for it. Putting all the coal miners to work. All specific, but wrong. Someone's got to lift the level of awareness to the intricacy of some of these things. They're much more complicated than people think.
I'm sorry, Governor, just to follow up, I have a similar question. Is there any kind of trust in the state to which citizens and businesses can contribute to so that some of these programs that Lisa mentioned could at least be, kind of kept going at a skeleton basis at least?
Well, private philanthropy is obviously very good. There are a number of organizations that I know of that are doing good things. But you're not going to have charity satisfying the needs of the general population. We all have responsibilities. That's why we pay taxes. We don't like it, but we pay them. You can understand you get what you pay for. Nothing is for nothing. So we really do have to have a public sense of responsibility financing public programs. We can't be having a marketplace approach to, if you live in a place that has resources, you can have clean water. If you don't, so be it. So really, private philanthropy, generosity is a good thing, but you can't walk away from the responsibilities the public sector has.
Thank you. I think we'll have to make that our last question. And I would like to have a hearty round of applause for our speaker. I would like to call your attention to the afternoon's workshops, and the titles are focused on building community, building coalitions, advocating, using technology to create an advantage for yourself, as I invite you to go learn, plan, and do. So thank you for being here.
I think you had nine points of the law there. Just having that.
I'm sorry you didn't get your question. I wanted to
have a workshop. I should go. Hey, how are you?
Good,
Didn't
how are
recognize
you?
you, Helen.
Yeah. I have a question about your session.
Uh-huh.
What are you going to use? Any specific GIS?
We're going to be using these.
Hey.
How are you, Tom? Good. GeoWeb, the Highlands Interactive Map, maybe another that Sean is going to be using, and we're going to be using Google Earth Pro, which you can now import shapefiles.
Right.
Hope that answered.
It does.
Which one do you think I should like?